Welcome to the dungeon with Harlan and Andrew.
Hi, hello. We are here. We are rolling. We are unmuted on another episode of The Dungeon. My name is
let us know
Harlan
if we're
Kelly.
not.
Yeah, my name is Harlan Kelly, and I am one of the hosts of the show. And today we have a sub and a guest. Jason, thanks for subbing in for Andrew today.
Sure thing.
The Jason Wardell, who you know
indeed.
from our stream, as the person who live soundtracks our stream on Mondays, is here with us today. And then we also have Noora as our guest today, the writer, editor, game designer, and layout artist from Monkey's Paw Games. Thank you so much
Hi.
for being here with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I love your background there.
Yeah, it's
I
it's
like
another.
I like that you are covering up Dr. Manhattan, so it's
I
like
know.
you are the Dr.
You're
Manhattan.
the one tired of these people.
Yeah.
Well, we start off the show every episode with the same question for folks, which is, how did you get into tabletop role-playing games?
Kind of by accident, I think. I was into like Magic the Gathering and a bunch of like role-playing game type video games in the like mid to late 90s, and then I got really into Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2.
Yeah,
And then a friend of mine was like, "Hey, this is based like I had no idea what Dungeons and Dragons was. I just loved Baldur's Gate."
yeah,
And then someone was like, "Oh yeah, there's a whole like role play game that's associated with this." And that's kind of how I got into the hobby was like, "Oh, there's like more of this." And then there was a period in high school where I tried out D&D, and for many predictable reasons that didn't turn out, and it kind of pitched me away from the hobby for a while. And then I got into it again in college, trying everything but D&D basically,
Sure.
like Deadlands and Paranoia, and
Oh man.
then I got into Dark
Paranoia.
Heresy and Legend of the Five Rings for a long time and ran those on IRC for a long time. And then hilariously, I was like, I did the thing that I think most game designers, writers, whatever do, which is you start writing material for your own home games, and you start codifying house rules and doing all these things. Like, you do all the game design things, but
Yeah.
you don't think of yourself as a game designer because you don't have a publishing deal.
yeah.
And then it takes somebody being like, "Hey, you've been doing a game design the whole time," and you're like, "Oh yeah, I guess so." So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of fell into it upside down, I guess.
I love the like homebrewing is game design. I
Yeah,
think it took me. I
absolutely.
had the same experience where it took me a while to learn that. Yeah, man, that's also when I came into tabletop role playing games much later. I started playing in 2016. Like the week I moved to Denver, I played for the first time. But even then, I kind of like had to kick down a couple of doors to find a community of people that weren't just me bullying my friends into playing with me.
Yeah.
But it seemed like you just jumped straight from D&D into playing other games, and I feel like that's like getting a group together is difficult, and hard mode is getting a group together with games that they're unfamiliar with, which is awesome that you were just like able to pull out these other games.
So the funny thing is, the game that I've played the most and the longest, which is Dark Heresy, the way that game came about is that I think I played one or two sessions because I was into Warhammer. I played one or two sessions of Dark Heresy just as one shots, and then I was like, I'm going to run a game. I'd never run a game of anything before, but I'm like,
Hell
I'm going
yeah.
to run Dark Heresy. And it was on the 4chan, the SubTG IRC in about 2007 or 8. And I was like, hey, who wants to play a game of Dark Heresy? I'm going to run. I'm going to make it up as we go along. And I remember I made the channel. It was called Adlib Heresy. And that game I ran that game sometimes 3 times a week
Oh hell yeah.
until 2014. And then one of the other players took over, and as far as I know, still runs the game semi-regularly.
Hell yeah.
So it was just a total sort of happy accident of like, and it's the same three core players from the original group too. It's like a 14-year-old game basically at this point, which was kind of funny, and like everybody is always talking about like Dark Heresy, especially on how lethal the system is and how easy it is to die. None of these guys have ever, like, they're still on their original characters. It's kind of bananas. Yeah, somehow it was like it just sort of happened, and I kind of fell into these communities by accident, the same sort of way that I did on the creation scene or whatever that I'm in. I kind of stumbled across the concept of itch.io completely on accident and entered. It was the Liber Baskerville game jam that Jared Sinclair put on, and the whole thing was basically you had to write a game or a something. You couldn't hit backspace. You could only strike out, and even then, like, don't necessarily do that. And you just had to write like a stream of consciousness thing in the Liber Baskerville font, and that's how I met. I mean, most of the people that I share a co-working space with was just through this jam that I kind of like, oh, this sounds like a fun writing experience. And then, I wrote a game about the sort of black dog of like British Irish mythology, and being followed by something and selling your soul at a crossroads kind of thing. And it was a really fun experience, and I met all these cool people. But I think there's like a profound lack of intentionality in my process of all things, in whether it comes from finding a group of people to play with, or even finding games to get into.
Well, I feel like I've asked you that question before on Twitter. Like, you shared a list of like your ongoing / current writing projects and things that you had like in the works, things you had in the can. And I was like, how do you keep track of that? And you were like, dude, I don't.
No, I used to, when I wrote straight into Google Docs, I used to have like 12 or 14 tabs open at any one time. I've moved away from Google Docs a bit for now, and I mostly write in Markdown.
Hell yeah, Markdown.
But I have so many ongoing projects at any one time, just because I get bored writing one thing for too long and I have to do something else, or I immediately start to get, like, anytime that I am a very undisciplined writer. I write every day, but I don't write the same thing every day. And it's just like, as soon as I feel any kind of resistance to the writing process, I have to switch gears, or else I'll just get stuck, basically. So,
yeah. Well, how do you finish things then? Like, because there has to be a point where you're like, or maybe it's not difficult. Maybe you just wait for that spiral to come around. But
I mean, the difficulty is waiting for that spiral to come around, basically. Like, I do find it very difficult to I think finishing projects is like writing is a skill, and finishing a piece of writing is a completely separate skill.
yeah,
and I have so much respect for people that have both of those.
Yeah. That's well said. That is
it's
a thing that happens all the time in this show is people say some shit that I feel deep down in my heart. I was like, oh, that's something I knew already, but have never said out loud or could not say out loud. But when you said that, I'm like, yeah, that's 100% right. Yeah. Well, you just finished a game though. You just finished Chalice, right?
Yeah. So Chalice, it's funny. This was actually, I think, published originally in 2019, way back, the first edition of Chalice. Okay, and it's gone through a lot of, this is the 4th edition now that's been released. And it started off as a trophy hack, basically. No, sorry. It started off as a Blades in the Dark hack. And then it became a trophy hack. And then it's at the stage now where it is a solo journaling game. But the idea has been to use a deck of tarot cards from the beginning. And it sounds very silly, but it literally, I woke up with the idea of a tarot-based game, and I was like, I'm going to do this. It sounds cool.
Yeah.
And but it was like one of those things where I like woke up with this idea and then had to like go to work and like keep it in my head the whole day.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's taken a long time to finish, and I hate finishing things because I want to continue to
Yeah.
sort of tinker
tweak
with
and
them.
fine tune and get it to
Yeah.
that, keep doing. Yeah.
I think that's the one of the great strengths of having things be digital is that you can keep tweaking them without
Yes.
the same. So like as soon as something goes into print, it feels very final. Like I've wanted to bring this project to print for a long time, but there's a kind of finality to printing, which mostly has to do with the economic realities of printing and shipping things. So it gets to a point where like with Chalice, when I finished the layout and everything, I have not opened that document since,
Yeah.
because I know as soon as I do, I'm going to want to tinker with something. And like, it hasn't gone to print yet, but I don't even want to think about that. Like, I just feel like, no, I'm just going to wait. So, but I'm pretty excited. It's really come along from the first iteration of it. And even down to the new layout I did where I snagged a bunch of like, the margins from illuminated, like medieval
That's
illuminated
exactly what I was gonna say. It has
manuscripts.
that illuminated feel to it, where it's
I wanted it to feel like an artifact,
Yeah.
because I think that's the cool thing about journaling games is that it's different from like a traditional game or whatever you want to call it, where like it all exists in the spoken. And
Yeah.
you know, you have your character sheet, and I don't know, maybe you get some art made of your character or whatever, but like it's the whole game is just in the conversation. But with journaling games, by the end of it, you're left with this really cool artifact
Yeah.
of what you've done.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that I really loved about seeing people talk about Thousand-Year-Old Vampire. Was I can't think of the artist's name, but it's on the Thousand-Year-Old Vampire website. There was that artist that drew the whole story. There's like the Viking dude and like the art is beautiful, but anyways, he illustrated, and it's like 500 pages of this one person's experience playing Thousand-Year-Old Vampire. I'm like, that was really cool, and like I said, you end up with this cool piece of work at the end of it. So that's kind of what I wanted to have as a finished product. So you know, I kind of pulled out all the stops with making like a cool looking book and layout and stuff. And I'm pretty excited for it to come to print, and then for me to never look at it again.
That feels like such a skill that's in its unique category too, inside of like writing and finishing things, of like knowing when to press the gas with like, no, what this project is this artifact, and I'm going to like really lean into like the visual, physical results of the game. Like that, but like, I feel like all the time whenever I'm trying to focus on anything, you know, any project I'm working on, I'm like, well, I could do all of these things, but I can't. So I have to kind of like take it down a hallway. And I mean, I don't know. I just think that's a very cool skill by itself. So
well, and sometimes you got to explore, like you got to explore the blades in the dark hack. You got to explore the name, I forget you said the name of the
Trophy?
original trophy. Yeah. And then take it down this way and be like, okay, no, now this is what it is, and this is what it was meant to be, and like identify that through experimentation, through play. You can find out what your project is. Yeah,
I think that's really what it comes down to, is how it ends up, because like all the stuff that I make, I profoundly make for myself and not for anybody else.
Yeah.
And so it just never felt quite right, even though like I love Trophy. I mixed feelings about Blades in the Dark. I really want to like Blades in the Dark. The thing that I'm working on right now is kind of if Blades in the Dark was good, and I don't mean that as disparagingly. I just think it has all the elements of something good, and then it kind of it peters out because it relies so heavily on genre emulation. But like,
okay.
And not that I think genre emulation is bad, but
it limits what stories can be told.
Yeah. Well, it's not even that. It's just that it sells you as the game that's about heists, but then you don't actually get to really do the heist. Like you kind of fast forward through the planning of the heist to key scenes of the heist, and then you do a bunch of procedures afterwards, whether you were in trouble or not. It's very, it would be a great board game. And again, I don't mean that as disparagingly as it sounds,
Yeah.
but it seems very procedure heavy. And it's just kind of like, these are procedures that are meant to elide the actual gameplay of running a heist. And I'm like, well, why? Just do like, everybody's here because they want to do The Italian Job meets Peaky Blinders.
Right.
And
I just want to be Danny Ocean. And,
rolling for heat doesn't really scratch that itch, at least for me.
Yeah, and that's what I think. I was just talking to a friend of mine about this, who we play TTRPGs together now, but we used to play in a band together, and so we had this like fun. I just kind of like learned how to be a creative person through playing in bands when I was a teenager, and I think there's this like we were talking about this exact same thing we used to talk about as teenagers, where like you want to emulate a band. And you're going to fail at it. So, but you should just try and emulate the band, because when you come up short, you'll find your own voice inside of it.
Yeah,
and it's the same thing with like, if you really love this album and you're like, man, this band like put out this first EP and now they sound different and I just want more of this. I just wish this band did more of this thing. So then you go and you make that band, and that's like the beauty of creativity. So when you said like, oh, it's not disparaging, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what you mean, where you're just like, I just want this game to be more like this. This game doesn't need to be more like this. I just want this game to be more like this.
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing that I think is the most interesting and wonderful about TTRPGs, and at the same time makes systems kind of the least interesting, is that like the way that I play, I don't know, Blades in the Dark, because we're talking about it. The way that I play Blades in the Dark is going to be a completely different game than the way you play Blades in the Dark. Is going to be completely different than the way Jason plays. And you can't account for that. And I don't think you should account for that. And I think a lot of designers get wrapped up in this idea of curated experience, where you're like, I want you to play the same game I'm playing. But I don't think that is or should be a realistic goal. I think a goal should be to let people find their own voice and let people find, like succeed or fail to create something new, not to recreate the same thing over and over again.
Right. They're tools to build something, not the pre-built house itself. Yeah.
And that's why, it's like you get on this path of like, I want to make I love these like hyper specific games that you see on itch and such, where it's like, this was clearly a passion project of like, I want to create this perfect little experience for me. And I think that's great. But I don't think that lens should be applied to all games. I think that it's like, if you're writing something specifically for you, then that's kind of what we all should be doing.
And for me,
but I think I don't know, go ahead.
Well, I'm thinking about your Dark Heresy game where nobody's died, honestly, because that's the same thing. Like, Dark Heresy doesn't prescribe that everyone has to explode into chaos or warp or whatever. It's like the table is going to determine that, and it's 100% the people sitting at that table who are making the game that they want to see. And it's not Dark Heresy that says this has to be super deadly, super insane. Like, no, you can have a 14-year game of Dark Heresy with the same characters. It's a possibility. It comes down to you, because it's your game. It's not
exactly
Games Workshop's game.
And the funny thing about that game in particular was that it's a combination of genre savviness and just like, none of the players really loved combat, that kind of simulated combat. So they just got really good at it. And it's kind of similar to a Lancer game that I was in, where I hate Lancer combat. So I just made a really kind of broken mech that kills things in 1 or 2 shots to make combat.
It's not a threat anymore. You don't need to deal with that.
You don't spend time doing it.
Yeah, we're not spending 2 hours a session fighting because I kill you in 2 hits with my giant laser cannon, and then the combat's over. It's done, right? So that's what this Dark Heresy group was. Is they just got really, really good at like, okay, so where's the heretics? We're going to kick down the door and shoot them all, and then we won't have to deal with them. It's like, oh well, don't you want to pursue this like intricate mystery and unravel the, and they're like, no, we're just going to find the leaders of these heretics and we're going to shoot them in the head and burn their house down.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Both a horrifying thing as a GM and also
Sweet.
so exciting because I'm like, what you want is to not play this game that I know how to like, curate this experience of here are all these baddies, blah blah blah. Here's this plot line. But if you can tell the table doesn't want to play that game, you're like, great, I'm gonna go do all these other things. Then I'm gonna spend no time on this. I'm gonna go do all these other things. Yeah.
So I'm an academic, and we talk about in college, university level, we talk so much about like cheating, and especially over the pandemic, and especially when people are online. And my stance has always been is like, if you're creating something that can be cheated on, you need to be creating something better.
Wow.
Because if that's the only thing that you're measuring is how well they succeed at your task, then you're not really measuring anything other than
it's a really weird litmus test too, right? And this is a thing that, it always comes up every little while. You see people complain about like dice fudging or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, so what? So what? Like, I don't know, if we were playing, doesn't matter if we're playing Dungeons and Dragons or Monopoly, and you nudge the dice over so you get a 6 instead of a 4. Like, who cares? What are the stakes of this interaction?
Yeah, the only point of Monopoly is to yell at your roommate. That's the only. Yeah, it's the only reason.
Be estranged from your father because he never lets you win for 10 years straight, right? Like
exactly.
It's right. It's like,
who cares if you fudge dice rolls? Talk about your trauma, right?
Like, it's like these are like, I think art is very important, and I think games are art, but they're also toys. So you've got to have some levity. You got to like it. Just because it's crucial and important doesn't mean that you have to take it so seriously.
And toys is such a good. You're
like,
right. That's like in the Venn diagram. It's like the toy is so important inside of what these things are. Yeah. Yeah,
it's a toy and it's fun, and like toys can provide, be educational and have all this other value to it. But it's still just like we make action figures,
right?
And I think you should embrace that and
or
celebrate.
Even like dirt bikes or like sports, like they all have their own toys to them too, like these things that you play around with that feel cool and fun. Yeah, you can.
I really like sports as a comparison for role-playing games. I think because it has both the activity element to it and also the like kind of
toxic fandom.
I was going to go with like uncritical devotion of something that you maybe know isn't great, or maybe you don't know that it isn't great, but you still love it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like if you are a sports fan, you have been disappointed by your team so many times, and like you still are like, but this year is going to be the year. You know what I mean? So, and I think games are a lot like that, where you can have a ton of hope for where things might go, and also just be mired in like a deep spiraling depression of like things will never get any better.
Yeah, I mean that it's like community rec, soccer. I used to play community rec soccer, and it felt like that parallel was 100% there, because a bunch of people who used to play this, and none of us know why we're doing this, really, but it feels good to hang out with people and to exercise, and but so anytime you can create that with something, it's like, I think that's like a beautiful comparison, because none of us are trying to be professional athletes. We're just finding the joy in like doing this thing. And
totally.
Yeah. So that's that was such a beautiful perspective on games. Thank you for sharing that with us here. That just made me want to like start a game everywhere just from hearing you talk about that.
Well, yeah, I mean it's supposed to be fun, right? At the end of the day, it's supposed to be
fun. Yeah,
it's supposed to be fun. That's why we're here.
Yeah,
hopefully.
Yeah, I remember in your description of this too. Like I remember the first time I played 10 Candles, I think was like one of my big kind of like understandings of how these games like RPG games can be, because I was just such a huge Dungeons and Dragons person before that, and I think I always viewed other games outside of this as just like, oh, you're just learning to do the same thing differently. And then I played 10 Candles and I was like, oh, Oh, okay. Like there's just so many other ways to tell stories, to interact with the same thing, that allows you to go other places. Because and a lot of it was because of how intensely it lets you let go of like any value systems, really, because you're going to die at the end. And I think that in the same way you're talking about, like at my tables when I was DMing and when I was playing, like I don't care if I die or not. Like it's these things are light and it's about all these other things. But when you see a system that like teaches people kind of like how to play that, and it's not necessarily like a curated experience, it's more of just like the tools just guide you down this path, and it's like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, I see.
Have you ever played Scoundrels in the Deep?
I have not, but
So it's in one of the I forget which edition of Worlds Without Master it's in, which is a fantastic zine that I wish Epidai would bring back. But so the whole Scoundrels in the Depths is a 2-player game, and the only tools you use are a book of matches. And so basically, like one person plays like a scoundrel trying to escape out of a cave, and the other person plays the cave. And you have to light the match and you pass it to the other person, and then they have to describe what they're doing before the match burns out.
Holy
and you like
shit.
pass it back. It was one of those things where like you read it and your mind just kind of goes like,
yeah,
like it's in the same way as 10 Candles. It's a very expansive kind of experience where you're like, oh, this is like, yeah, games can go in places that I never imagined that they would or could, and this is really cool.
Yeah, it's so cool listening to you talk about like how you like let a game become itself a little bit too. I was just talking to a friend about how that's some of my favorite part about making a character is deciding some things at the beginning and having like throwing away half of them because you play the character and you're like, oh, they would do this for this reason and this is what they're like. And I just think it's a beautiful act to like listen to a fictional character and to hear you talk about it that in the same way with like listening to a game and like letting this thing kind of like come out of the ether in a path that you weren't like shoving it down, that you were just like coaxing it out of. Is so cool.
I didn't actually have anything. I was just agreeing.
Yeah.
It sounded like I was like, but no, I 100%.
Well, we're close to the end here. Jason, do you have any more questions? I know that.
I mean, I could, Noora, I could pick your brain for forever. I've got my copy of Chainmail here that
nice.
and my cards.
Oh yeah, I've got a bunch more of those coming out. Beautiful. I've had a time with Canadian Mixam this year. Unfortunately, they're just mailed.
Everyone's had a time with their own individual localized Mixam, as my
and it's not their fault. I understand that there's like a global paper shortage. It's just like it's frustrating times for everybody. Plus, Canada Post kind of sucks. So it.
So
will you tell us what the cards are? I just don't know about the cards. I want to know about the game.
Yeah, so it's kind of it's like a 1-player like Troika play-by-post sort of thing, where every month I send people a postcard that has like a location on it and a bunch of encounters and some stuff. And the idea is that you're part of like a caravan going through a weird mythical land.
Hex crawl in there.
Yeah, and so each month there's like a new location to explore with your caravanners, and there's like misfortunes and stuff. Like like one of the favorite ones I did recently was like all giant dinosaurs basically, and like you could just get stepped on by like a giant dinosaur and lose half your caravan or whatever. So it's a very like it's sort of, I was trying to capture like Zork kind of, or like Myst, or those old kind of muds and like puzzle games. I was trying to capture a little bit of that and then a little bit of the old sort of play-by-post role-playing games, and came out with this weird sort of science fantasy mishmash. But and
it's super fun, and I've been playing it a lot like a solo journaling game. I have my caravan, they run through their obstacles and we choose where to go, and they die. But the other thing that I've seen about this that I've been thinking about really hard is that like these are ready built like locations that I could drop into any game.
Yeah, you could
I'm running
use them
a
for
Brave
anything,
Zenith
really.
game right now that this would be like 1,000% relevant for. And so like I have it, I keep it with me. I keep it in my notebook that comes with me everywhere I go.
Oh, nice.
if there's that opportunity for me to be like, oh, we're going to the City of Fools today, guys. Let's
Yeah. I really wanted them to be kind of multi-use, like, you know, and that's why I love things like postcard dungeons or little pamphlets or just, and the one who does it the best is Nate Tremay.
Nate Tremay.
Is just makes the most incredible stuff, and a lot of it is in such small packaging, but it'll be like 2 or 3 pages, and it's some of the best writing and art that you've ever seen. And it's just like, oh, this is, like you said, you could drop it in anywhere. So I aspire to be that concise.
The other thing I keep in my notebook is a copy of Tunnel Goons for just that instance. Like, if I need a game to go with this on the fly, I've got it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, because that's the GM's dream, is to have something that allows you to do less prep, and so without feeling like you need to know everything. So it's a beautiful poetic balance in there, it seems. Well, cool. We're running on the end of time here. Thank you so much for talking with us. We do in the interview. Jesus, my brain is melted by TTRPGs. With our random roll table questions. So if you have a D20 handy and you'd like to roll on our random roll table.
Big money, no whammies. I got a 4.
A 4. All right. Well, this is a fun question. I don't think we've asked this one. Do you have a favorite set of dice or any dice rituals?
Rituals? No, I do have, and this is going to get me canceled more than anything I've ever said on Twitter. But I have the candy corn dice.
You have the candy corn dice.
I love candy corn. I know it's a big disappointment to all of my fans, but I love the candy corn dice. I use those because I think they're very funny.
Well, it's the spooky season, so
it is. It's perfect timing for it.
Incredible. I love it. We got to see. We have the true reveal here. Wait. I want to sneak one more in, just a quick one, because I almost asked you earlier what game you were excited about, but then you mentioned this like Blades in the Dark revamp a little bit. Do you have a name for it? I just want to be excited about it in the future.
Oh yeah, it's called. I'm.
You're allowed to change it. You're allowed to change it after this.
But so like I'm going with either the French or the German pronunciation of either Landsknecht or Landsknecht. So like, the like Germanic sort of mercenary soldiers.
I don't know about it, but I'm going to read the Wikipedia page later.
So basically it was like pike and shot soldiers.
Okay, cool.
Pike and shot formations, basically. So that it's basically just being a shitty mercenary in like 1700s Europe.
All right. Well, I'll be on the lookout for it. That's awesome. I just wanted the name aside to catch the excitement that I've already felt there. So, well, cool. Thank you. Do you want? We're going to drop links to your website, your Twitter down here below. We'll put them in the Twitch chat in just a second. And if you're watching this on YouTube, they'll be down below. So if you want to check out any of Monkey's Paw Games, any of the work we've been talking about here, you can get those games from there. But is there anything else you specifically want to plug inside of that, or?
So Chalice is still doing pre-orders for print, and we'll be doing it for at least a little while longer. But that's literally the first thing that pops up when you go to monkeyspawgames.com. So that's coming out soon. There's a bunch of other fun projects that I'll be printing soon. I think Chalice has really proven that the whole have a pre-order and a mailing list system really works. So fuck you, Kickstarter, and this is where we're going from now. So I think there's going to be other things released into that format. Like I'm working on for anybody that's been following the Doom crawls that I've been releasing, I'm going to be doing an omnibus once I hit number 12.
Cool.
And so that's going to be pretty fun too. And those are the two big things.
Hell yeah. Well, I hope you keep finishing works so we can keep checking them out.
Me too.
And thank you so much for being here. We do have a little sign off that we say on the end of every episode. Jason, do you got it? Do you want to do it? Do you know what it is? Do it.
Tip your DM.
Tip your DM, everybody. All right, just
Tip
send
your
them.
DM.
Just send them $5 on Venmo after the game. It'll make them feel so good. All right, we're out of here. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for having
Bye,
me.
Noora. Thanks for
Welcome
being
to
here.
the
Bye.
dungeon with Harlan and Andrew.